By now we know that Ahsoka trained Sabine Wren at some point in time, but what we do not know is when was this exactly, and why was Sabine so weak against Shin Hati, to the point where even Huyang tells Sabine that she was extremely weak with the Force. Even the weakest Padawans were not as weak as her, so it's pretty interesting the way how they trashed Sabine during both episodes. We're going to discuss that in detail, and also what Dave Filoni said about Sabine's training as well. It gives you a very good insight later on. At the end of Ahsoka Episode 1, Sabine Wren and Shin Hati engage in a tense duel over the star map device. While Sabine initially manages to put up a fight, the tides swiftly turn in Shin's favor, culminating with a clean lightsaber hole through the side of her abdomen. Ahsoka Tano quickly comes to Sabine's rescue, but the skirmish serves as a reality check for Sabine and the viewers about her relative lack of strength against her opponent. Considering Sabine's history of handling the Darksaber, her swift and decisive loss to Shin comes as somewhat unexpected. Not only had she received training in lightsaber combat by giants such as Kanan Jarrus, but Ahsoka Tano herself also taught her over multiple years. Despite being mentored by these two esteemed Jedi, Shin was able to incapacitate Sabine with ease. Honestly guys, if Ahsoka hadn't intervened, it's plausible that Shin could have dealt a fatal blow and killed her. This duel revealed multiple weaknesses and factors that contributed to Sabine's inability to effectively counter Shin. First of all, the Ahsoka series raised the question of when did Ahsoka actually train Sabine Wren, because they never outright say this could answer the question of why she is so weak. The story follows Ahsoka as she seeks to track down Grand Admiral Thrawn upon hearing whispers of his re-emergence. With the galaxy still recovering from the Galactic Civil War and the New Republic as vulnerable as ever, Ahsoka wants to rid the New Republic of Thrawn's threat before it's too late. Along the way, she recruits those she trusts most in the galaxy, most notably her former apprentice Sabine Wren, who she has a troubling past with, signaling that she was a terrible apprentice at the very least. However, the master and apprentice relationship between Ahsoka and Sabine was fully established. Sabine training to be a Jedi has been teased in promotional teasers and trailers for the series, but Ahsoka Episodes 1 and 2 have gone in depth on the fractured relationship between the two women. Ahsoka reveals that she walked away from Sabine's training just as she walked away from her own when she found herself becoming too challenged by Sabine's stubbornness and vice versa. With Ahsoka taking viewers over 10 years away from the finale of Star Wars Rebels, the question of when exactly Ahsoka trained Sabine is left unanswered with these two episodes. Fans were taken aback by the revelation in the Ahsoka series that Sabine Wren had Jedi training, indicating that her tutelage commenced after the storyline concluded in Star Wars Rebels. Further clarification comes in the second episode of Ahsoka, where Sabine mentions that her lightsaber is the very one given to her by Ezra in the finale of Rebels, something that couldn't have transpired had her Jedi training begun earlier. Rogue One also provides a subtle clue regarding this timeline. While Hera Syndulla and Chopper are visible at the Rebel base on Yavin 4, both Sabine and Ahsoka are conspicuously missing from the scene. The dynamics between Ahsoka and Sabine, as depicted in the Ahsoka series, suggest a lengthy period of collaboration before they eventually parted ways. By the point in time we encounter Ahsoka in the second season of The Mandalorian, Sabine is no longer her apprentice. This likely occurs a year or two prior to the events in Ahsoka. Alternatively, it's conceivable that Ahsoka was mentoring Sabine throughout the Galactic Civil War, which could explain their absence from leading roles in the rebellion during that period. You see, what you have to understand is that for a Jedi, training is a hallowed aspect of their development, and Ahsoka, aware of the hardships of being molded into a Jedi amid conflict similar to what she went through in the Clone Wars, might have wished to protect Sabine from a similar experience. This could afford a window in the Star Wars chronology where Sabine's training could feasibly fit between the events of Star Wars Rebels and Ahsoka. It's also possible that Ahsoka's approach to training Sabine during a time of war led to the strains that eventually fractured their relationship. Now, figuring figuring out the timeline per se when was Sabine trained by Ahsoka, now we can talk about how did she actually lose to Shinhati so bad. According to Hu Yang, Sabine's level of force sensitivity is exceptionally low, even claiming it to be the weakest he has ever encountered in any Padawan. This serves as a critical distinguishing factor between Sabine and Sheen and likely contributed to Sabine's inability to hold her own in their combat. Shin's connection to the Force enables her to be more acutely aware of her surroundings, her weapon, and her adversary. In contrast, Sabine's deficient Force sensitivity limits her to leveraging only her skills in lightsaber combat to make up for her shortfall. As for Shinhati, details about her past remain scant at this time. What is clear is that she is highly skilled in lightsaber combat, although the full range of her Force abilities is still undisclosed. Her mentor, Baylan Skoll, seems to have a keen interest in amassing power, which likely influenced his decision to select Shin as his apprentice given her presumed Force talents. Both master and apprentice appear to share an ambition for power, making it reasonable to think that Shin is indeed gifted in the Force. And just as you thought things couldn't get crazier, of course Dave Filoni gets involved, and he has talked about this in detail, especially the bond between Ahsoka and Sabine Wren. Now, what he had to say, what Dave had to say, is pretty enticing, and he went on to state the following. He says here, "I'm telling this story about this mentor-student relationship that passes from Anakin to Ahsoka to Sabine." He went on to say that what he is creating right now, what he is doing, is pretty remarkable, essentially telling us that he is satisfied with how everything proceeded, telling us that the story he created is pretty enticing, at least to him. So we'll have to see the entire series, of course. The 2 episodes were pretty promising and were pretty great. However, there is a keen thing here that we need to see and analyze. Dave Filoni goes on to mention Anakin and Sabine in the same sentence. He goes on to say that Anakin was the master, Ahsoka was the apprentice. Then Ahsoka became the master, and now Sabine is the apprentice. Essentially, Sabine is being taught by Anakin as well, retrospectively, kinda through Ahsoka, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. I mean, she did lose against Shinhati. The problem is, though, she obviously was pretty rusted when it came to her lightsaber combat. Her problem, of course, is she needs to get up to speed again with her fighting technique. She may not be a great Force user, but she could definitely stand her ground when it came to lightsaber combat, at least what we saw from Star Wars Rebels with Kanan Jarrus, and by what we've been hearing from Ahsoka. So essentially, Anakin is also contributing to the training of Sabine Wren, and it's going to be pretty interesting, as Dave pointed out here, that this mentor-student relationship will be pretty crazy to see how it develops through episodes and what the finale might actually hold. Leave all your thoughts down below.